What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. Today's fanfic is titled, What if Naruto and female Kurama created the most powerful harem in history? Part 1. The Legend of Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. October 10th. Screams. That's all that could be heard throughout Konoha, the strongest village in the elemental nations. Whether it be from civilians or the shinobi yelling out orders or the screams right before their deaths. The reason for this is because only a few days ago word had reached Konoha that the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the greatest of the Biju, was on its way towards Konoha and was now only a few hundred feet from the walls. Although for the fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato, the leader and strongest ninja Konoha has ever produced was only concentrated on the screams of one person, his wife Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina. She was currently in labor with their first child, a son. He wasn't even due for another 3 weeks, but Minato knew of only one way to stop the Kyuubi, and after a lengthy and hazard to his health argument with his wife, she agreed to the plans, which was why they had to induce the pregnancy. Finally, after what seemed like forever, both parents heard the sound of crying and knew that their family was finally finished, for however short it may be. With a nod, Minato looked at the nurse after she cleaned him and handed him to Kushina and left the family alone. He looks just like you, Minato-kun, said Kushina, then added, which means he must get the brains from me, with a laugh from the both of them. Suddenly the door opened and there stood 3 figures. The oldest of them the previous leader of the village, the Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, with titles such as the God of Shinobi and the Professor. The next one was the legendary Sannin Jiraiya, the Great Toad Sage, a world-known pervert and student of the Sandaime and teacher to Konoha's Yellow Flash himself, and the last and youngest one was Hitaki Kakashi, student of Namikaze Minato. Sarutobi looked at the happy family for a few seconds with a smile on his face, but it soon dropped. Minato, are you sure you want to do this? You know that I can do it, he said. Minato looked at his predecessor and said with a small sad smile, yes, I must do this. I knew what being Hokage meant and I swore to protect the village with my life. He looked at his student, then his teacher, next was the old man himself, then finally to his wife and son. Besides, he won't be alone. Naruto will have all of you when I'm gone. Jiraiya looked at his apprentice, Naruto still went with the name I see. Minato and Kushina smiled at him and said together, it was your best book, which had Sarutobi and Kakashi to chuckle and Jiraiya to pout. As they were going to continue their conversation, a loud roar echoed throughout Konoha. Minato sighed and looked at his wife as she held onto their son. He noticed that she was still pale but didn't think much of it. It's time, Kushina. I must leave now before more people die. He walked over to her and kissed her long and hard and hugged her for what seemed way too short for either of them. He took his son into his arms and kissed his forehead, causing Naruto to wake up and grab a lock of his spiky yellow hair dangling in his son's face, causing a yelp to come from the strongest ninja alive and laughs from everyone else in the room. With a final kiss and hug to his wife, he and the others left to face the Kyuubi and allow Kushina to rest, never noticing the growing pile of blood. On the way to the wall, they stopped at the Hokage Tower to pick up the supplies. When they arrived at the wall, Minato bit his finger and went through some hand seals and called out Kuchio's no jutsu, and once the smoke cleared, a giant toad appeared. He looked around him and spotted the group. What did you call me for, Minato? He asked. Minato looked up at him and said, I need you, Gamabunta, to take me and my son to the Kyuubi, then hold him as long as you can while I prepare the jutsu. The newly named Gamabunta looked wide-eyed at that, then said, so you're going to use it after all? Alright, let's get going. And with that said, Minato with Naruto in his arms jumped onto Gamabunta and raced off where his ninja were stalling the Kyuubi. When the trio arrived, the ninja cheered for their leader. As Minato looked around at the damage, his eyes finally landed on the Kyuubi. Gamabunta, hold it as long as you can while I draw the seals on Naruto. Gamabunta replied, I'll do my best, but I won't last long against that kind of power. As Gamabunta attacked and dodged the Kyuubi, Minato started the delicate process of drawing the seals on his son's stomach. As he finished, he planted a kiss to his son's forehead and started the sequence of seals for the jutsu. Kyuubi, I do not know why you are attacking, but I cannot let you continue, he yelled at the beast. As he finished the last seal, he yelled out, Shiki Fujin. There was a bright flash and the other ninjas stopped what they were doing to watch. They were shocked at what they saw. What have you called me for, mortal? A voice asked. As Minato looked behind him, he saw the Shinigami. It had fangs poking out of its mouth with horns on its head and purple skin. It also had a large knife like Gamabunta. He looked it in its eyes and said low enough so only the Shinigami could hear him, Shinigami-sama, I have summoned you to seal the Kyuubi into my son to stop its destruction. Shinigami looked at Kyuubi and said, very well, but as stated, I will have your soul as payment. Hi, arigato Shinigami-sama. Minato watched as the Shinigami's arm went through him to the Kyuubi and stuck its hand into the creature. As it pulled back, it brought with it the soul of the beast, but it was not acting like it was before. It looked around as if it didn't recognize where it was. As the Shinigami placed its soul into his son, he finished the process by drawing the remaining seals on his son's stomach before he died. As he finished, he saw the same three people arrived next to him, but before he could say anything, though, Sarutobi spoke up. Minato, I'm sorry, but there were complications with Kushina after we left. She was bleeding and the doctors couldn't stop it. She wrote a letter to Naruto before she died roughly 30 minutes ago. Minato looked on wide-eyed. That was not supposed to happen. She was supposed to raise their son. Hear his first words, watch his first step, watch him as he entered his first day at the academy. He let a few tears fall from his face before he looked back up. Sarutobi, tell the people my last wish is for them to see my son as the hero he is. For now he will take his mother's name until he is strong enough for his full name. I have left further instructions in the safe in the office. With that said, the Shinigami pulled out his soul and ate it. With his anchor gone, Gamabunta returned to the world of the summons. Sarutobi picked up Naruto and held him close and rocking him back and forth to quiet his crying at the loss of his father. Jiraiya looked at his student before picking him up as the rest of the shinobi and kunoichi surrounded their fallen leader. After the Sandaime issued orders, the two adults, one young teen, and one baby left back to the village. As Minato opened his eyes, he suspected to be in the belly of the Shinigami. He did not expect to be in a throne-like room with who he assumed is the Shinigami, as he looked different from before looking at him and saying, we have much to discuss. After about 10 minutes of that, one ninja picked him up and started banging his head against the wall, watching as more and more blood dripped from his head. As Naruto started drifting to unconsciousness, he saw the same man's eyes turn red with two tomos in each eye. He started going through hand seals and called out Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, before he took a deep breath and a large ball of fire shot out of his mouth and engulfed Naruto. The last thing he heard were the people cheering for the demon's death. During their cheering, they all suddenly stopped when they felt a lot of killing intent. They all turned around and saw one very pissed off Sandaime Hokage. Anbu, he yelled. Suddenly he was surrounded by at least 20 Anbu. Kill the villagers and take the shinobi to Ibiki, then after he's done with them, execute them. All of the Anbu chorused, hi, and started. The Sandaime ran over to Naruto with Inu and Neiko, two of just many Anbu who had guarded the boy since his birth, and was horrified at what they saw. He gently picked him up and did a quick Shunshin no Jutsu and teleported to the hospital. He quickly ran in and called for the best doctor, which happened to be one of the few who did not hate the boy. After the doctor got over the shock in which Naruto was in, he called a few nurses and started working. After a couple of hours, the doctor came back out. The Sandaime immediately started asking questions. How is he, doctor? The doctor took a breath before replying, I've never seen so much damage before. The Kyuubi's chakra is healing him, but with the amount of damage and how severe some of his wounds are, I'm not sure if that will be enough, he quietly said. The old man was in shock. He had barely heard everything else the doctor had told about his condition. He had failed Minato and Kushina in protecting their child so many times, and now even with the Kyuubi's amazing healing abilities he could still die, the child that he saw as his own grandson. He couldn't bear to think of that little ball of sunshine wouldn't be calling him Gigi anymore. He quietly thanked the doctor and made his way into Naruto's room. He saw all the equipment attached to the boy. He silently sat in a chair by his bed and gently grabbed his hand, praying that he would make it through this. He was so deep in thought that he barely heard the door open but knew it was not anyone coming to harm Naruto as he recognized the chakra signature. When the door fully opened, in walked one of his personal Anbu Inu. One who was very attached to the boy. He looked at his leader and asked, "How is he?" The Sandame looked more like a worried family member at that point than the god of shinobi and replied, "Even with his healing abilities, the doctor estimates a 10% survival rate. Apparently many of the weapons had been coated in different poisons, and that is taking most of his healing abilities right there, and there are so many more." Inu looked back at his young charge and took off his mask. Who appeared was none other than Hitaki Kakashi. He walked over and ran his hand through the boy's hair that still had clots of blood and dirt in it. He bent down and placed a kiss on his bandaged forehead and whispered as a tear ran down his cheek, "Don't give up, Otudo. I know you can beat this. There's still so much I want to teach and show you." The Sandame smiled at the scene, knowing that there were people besides himself who loved the boy. When he saw Kakashi put his mask back on, he knew it was time to be serious. With a stern face, the Hokage looked at his Anbu and said, "Inu, report. As ordered, the villagers have been executed and the shinobi have been sent to Ibiki. From what we've already received so far, it seems some civilian council members have offered an award for the demon's death. My team and many others are waiting your orders, Lord Hokage." Sarutobi took on a hard expression and ordered, "Get rid of the trash, no mercy." Inu nodded and disappeared. While that was going on, Naruto awoke in what looked like a sewer. He jumped up when he heard a voice coming from one of the ends of the tunnel. Figuring this voice must know where he is and how he got here, he started to head towards it. After a few minutes, he walked into a huge room with a large cage with a piece of paper with the kanji for seal written on it. The voice that he could recognize as feminine was still calling out to him, so he got closer to the cage. When he got close enough, he was surprised at what he saw. It was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and he had seen many beautiful women in Konoha who didn't hate him. She had long red flowing hair to the mid of her back. A heart-shaped face with red eyes and red lips with a light tanned skin. Her were quite large, easily DDs with wide hips and a perfect and legs that went on forever. She was wearing a red kimono showing a bit of cleavage with designs of sakura petals, and on the back was the legendary Kyuubi no Kitsune. His jaw was on the floor and she giggled at him, which startled him out of his trance. He started to blush and uttered the only word he could think of, "Beautiful." She then also blushed a bit and thanked him. He looked at her again and asked, "Anyo, but who are you and where are we? Also, why is someone as pretty as you locked in a cage?" She smiled at him but also frowned. She started to cry, and Naruto, not liking seeing people cry, especially beautiful women, ran into the cage and hugged her. Kyuubi was startled when she opened her eyes to see her jailer hugging her, trying to comfort her. She was so glad but also afraid of what he might do when she told him of whom she was. She cleared her throat and got his attention. She smiled at him, which made him blush again, and she started speaking, "Naruto-kun, and before you say anything, yes, I know your name. In fact, I know everything about you since you were born. The reason for this is because I've been sealed inside you since then." He looked at her with wide eyes and asked, "Then who are you?" She calmed herself down before beginning again. "Naruto-kun, you know the story of how the Kyuubi attacked Konoha the day you were born and the Yondaime killed the Kyuubi but died too, correct?" Naruto nodded and said, "Of course everyone knows that." "Well, that's only partially correct," she said, earning a raised eyebrow from the little boy, which she thought looked incredibly cute. He asked, "Which part?" "The part of him killing it. You see, even a man as strong as the Yondaime was not strong enough to kill the Kyuubi, so he did what others have done before to the tailed beasts. He sealed it away at the cost of his own life by summoning the Shinigami, who is the only being besides the rest of the gods that is stronger than the Kyuubi." He listened on with wide eyes as she continued. "But you see, he couldn't just seal a being such as the Kyuubi into anything. A vase would be pointless since it would break free in only a matter of minutes. An adult would be no good because they wouldn't be able to withstand Kyuubi's chakra because their own chakra networks have already been formed. So the only being strong enough to contain the greatest of the Biju is ironically a newborn baby. This is because a baby's chakra pathways have not yet developed so they can adapt to the demon's chakra. She explained. She watched as emotion after emotion and finally understanding crossed the boy's eyes. He looked at her and spoke, "I was the child, wasn't I?" She nodded and he gulped as he prepared his next question. "Then that means you're the Kyuubi no Kitsune?" He again asked. She replied, "Yes, Naruto-kun, I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune. But I want you to know that not all demons are bad as humans believe." He looked at her, still hugging her, unable to move from everything he had just learned. "I guess that makes sense since you don't seem very mean to me." She smiled at him and hugged him tighter and begun crying again. "Kyuubi-chan, what's the matter? Why are you crying?" he asked. Kyuubi blushed at the chan suffix and thought, "I can't believe a 5-year-old is making me blush, a cute 5-year-old but a 5-year-old nonetheless." She bent down and looked him in the eyes and said, "It's because of me, Naruto-kun, that you lost your family, that the villagers and shinobi hate you and hurt you. You should hate me because of everything that I've done." She sniffed and wiped her eyes as the tears continued pouring down. "Kyuubi-chan, it's not your fault. If they can't tell the difference between a jailer and its prisoner, then that's their fault. Besides, I have a feeling that the reason I heal so quickly is because of you, so you've been helping me without me even having to ask you for help." He smiled at her as he wiped the tears from her face. She looked at him shocked, thinking, how can he be so kind and caring after everything he's been through? "I promise you, Naruto, I'll always be there for you." She smiled and hugged him tighter as he let her rest her head on his shoulder. After a few minutes of letting her calm down and straighten herself out, he asked her where they were. She laughed nervously since she had forgotten that question. "Well, Naru-kun. Damn, Naru-kun, now what the hell's wrong with me? We are in your mind right now. The reason it looks like a sewer is because it represents what you are usually feeling, and you usually feel sad and lonely, which gets you the sewer. Since you're here now, why don't you try to change the scenery to something better?" He agreed and closed his eyes. His eyebrows scrunched up in concentration looked so cute to her she had to restrain herself from glomping him. When he had the image in his head, he heard a gasp from who he assumed was Kyuubi and opened his eyes. It was exactly like he imagined, only more lively. There was forest behind them and you were able to see some animals in it. To the right was a waterfall with a pond big enough to bath in or swim or anything else, hint hint, adult stuff, nosebleed. In front of them was a wide open plain with animals roaming around, and way off into the distance you could see snow-covered mountains. Kyuubi looked around awestruck at how beautiful it was. She turned around and this time did glomp Naruto, repeating how beautiful it was. He motioned to her neck and she felt a choker there. "That is basically the seal and all this the cage. I've allowed you to alter anything you like and to add anything also." He smiled at her as she once again cried, but this time of tears of happiness. After walking around a bit, Naruto grabbed Kyuubi's hand and motioned for them to sit down. When they did, she could see the hesitation on his face. "What's the matter, Naru-kun? You can ask me anything, you know." He looked into her eyes and knew that what he was about to ask was big, but he believed her. "Q-chan," he started. She blushed at her new nickname but let him continue. "If you're willing to tell me, I would like to know why you attacked Konoha." She looked at him for a few seconds, then nodded her head. "I was sleeping in my den when I was attacked by a man who had yellow slitted eyes and smelt like snakes and used snakes in his jutsu. I chased him out of my den and turned around to go back in, but as I turned around there was another man there. Unlike the other man, his eyes were red with 3 tomos in each eye that morphed together, and he used one of his eye's powers to trap me into a powerful genjutsu. He tortured me in my human form for 72 hours in that genjutsu, when in reality it had only been a second in the real world. He then used my broken mind to control me and had me attack Konoha. The rest you know, but even though I don't know the first man, I do know who the second one was." Naruto looked at her with wide eyes. What happened to her was terrible. He quickly hugged her, telling her everything was okay as she began to cry. I believe I know who the man who attacked you first. He sounds like the snake Sanin Orochimaru who betrayed the leaf shortly after the Yondaime was chosen for Hokage. What was the name of the second person? I know him because he had used me before using the same method to attack Konoha during the reign of the Shodai. Luckily with the Shodai's bloodline he was able to stop me and the man, but he still lives after all these years. He knew he would need help of controlling me again, which is why he used the first man to distract me. The name of that man is Uchiha Madara. Naruto was once again shocked. The man who helped found Konoha has tried to destroy it at least twice. Not only that, but he'd have to be over 100 years old by now. Q-chan, do you know how he is still alive? She nodded and asked, Naruto-kun, do you know where bloodlines originate from? He shook his head and she explained. You see, about 90% of the world's bloodlines originate from demons. The other 10% come from the gods. Reason there are more demonic bloodlines is because before the age of ninja, humans and demons lived together in peace. There were a few humans and demons, of course, that didn't get along as well. Well, some of those demons fell in love with the humans and they had children. From this is where most bloodlines started. After many generations the bloodlines got stronger, but with that the humans got greedy, wanting that power for themselves. Since I was the strongest of demons about a century before the Rakudo Sennin, I was attacked by a group of men wanting my power. They used an ancient demonic spell to take some of my power before I managed to drive half of them away after I killed the other half. This is how the Sharingan was created. I was not worried about my power being taken because, unknown to humans, when a demon's power is taken unwillingly there are problems that come with that power. For one, since I am a female, any male that uses my power will start to lose their sanity, and the longer they keep that I activated the faster it happens. Second, in order to achieve the second to last form of the Sharingan the user must kill their best friend. This happens to both males and females. This form is called the Mangekyo Sharingan. The longer the user uses this form the faster they lose the sight of their eyes. Truly a wonderful side effect for a Dujutsu user. But the final form of the Sharingan is how Madara still lives today. This form is called the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. This form grants the user eternal youth and immortality. In order to achieve this form you must take the eyes of another Mangekyo Sharingan user, but not just any, it must be your own relative. The closer the blood is the more successful it will be. Madara took the eyes of his brother to achieve his form, and so far he is the only one who has achieved this. Naruto was just sitting there absorbing the information, which he concluded in one sentence. So we got one crazy psychotic lunatic out there that is immortal and probably the strongest person in the world, and a bunch of crazy male Uchihas running around Konoha acting as the police force. She nodded with a smile. Great. Just great. Naru-kun, watch your language. She scolded him. He looked at her with a raised eyebrow for a few seconds before both burst out laughing. Thanks Q-chan, I needed that. She smiled and said, no problem. Q-chan, you wouldn't happen to know who my parents were, would you? Actually Naru-kun, I do know of who your father is. He looked at her with wide eyes before jumping her, repeating, tell me, over and over again. She laughed and told him to calm down. Once he obliged, she began. Now I could just tell you, but I want you to figure it out on your own with the hints I give you. I know how smart you are, so it shouldn't be that hard, okay? He nodded. She smiled and said, alright, now tell me your hair color and eye color. He just told her, yellow hair, blue eyes. She nodded, trying to keep from imaging the look on his face when he finds out. Good, now who else in Konoha has that combination? He thought for a second and came up with the Yamanakas, but their hair wasn't spiky like his and the hair and eye color were a lighter shade. He remembered Senju Tsunade had a closer shade of hair color to him in a picture he saw in Gigi's office once, but she would have known he wasn't a demon and come back for him if they were related due to her being a med nin. He tried to think of anyone else and could only think of one other person. It was so far-fetched but made the most sense. Why he chose him and not another child. Why he didn't have a father growing up, because he was dead and didn't abandon him like the villagers said. Hell, now that he thought about it, he really did just look like a chibi yondaime with whisker marks. He looked back up at her and she knew he figured it out by the look in his eyes. My father is the yondaime. It was more of a statement than a question, but she nodded anyways. This time it was her who hugged him to comfort him when he started to cry. She said soothing words to calm him down. After a while he looked at her and asked her, why? She smiled a sad smile and replied, I had heard a lot about the yondaime during my time outside, and I heard he was an honorable man who loved his village and the precious people inside it. I don't think he could have asked for someone else's child if he couldn't use his own. But instead of asking me, why don't you ask him? He just stared at her like she had grown a second head and said, huh. She pointed behind him at there stood 3 figures, 2 males and a female. The only female had fiery orange-red hair with emerald-looking eyes. She had the body of a kunoichi. The first male his eyes landed on looked exactly like the yondaime. From the hair, eyes, even the famous coat he wore. The last male had on what looked like a black suit. He had black hair and black eyes. The only thing that didn't seem black was his skin. The man in the suit stepped forward and introduced himself. Hello, young Naruto. I am the Shinigami and these 2 are your parents, your mother Uzumaki Kushina and your father Namikaze Minato. Everything that Kyuubi has told you is true, by the way, even though I knew you believed her anyways with being a god and all. He chuckled at his own joke, but when he realized no one else did, he started mumbling about, no sense of humor. Kushina and Minato looked at each other and nodded their heads and grabbed each other's hand and walked towards Naruto. When he didn't move, he heard Kyuubi whisper in his ear, go Naruto. Go towards your parents. And with that she gave him a little push, and that was all that was needed as he sprinted towards his parents as they bent down and he tackled them, crying into their shoulders. They just held him tight, cooing him. Kyuubi looked on with tears in her eyes. Shinigami walked past them towards Kyuubi. Kyuubi, how are you? I'm good, Shinigami-sama. I don't think I'd rather be in anybody else. As I'm sure you've been watching, I'm amazed at how kind and caring Naru-kun is and how he hasn't lost his sanity with everything that's happened to him. Shinigami just smirked at Naru-kun and agreed. Indeed, he has a very strong spirit, but do you remember when you were first sealed that I had made a deal with Minato that when Naruto first met you that he would be here as well? She nodded and said, yes, I remember, and I'm glad you allowed his mother to come as well. I'm relieved that she didn't abandon him, but still sad that he had to grow up these past 5 years alone. Shinigami just nodded his head as he watched the family. While those 2 were talking, the family had finally calmed down when both parents noticed something while hugging their son. When they both looked at each other, they saw the same conclusion that they hoped wasn't real, and then looked down at Naruto. Kushina spoke first. Naru-chan, she said, getting his attention. He blushed at the nickname as Kushina smiled at him while Minato chuckled. Naruto, we need you to lift up your shirt so we can confirm something, okay, sweetie? She said, giving him a gentle hug. He slowly nodded his head, having a good idea what they wanted to see. He slowly lifted his shirt and both parents gasped at what they saw. Their child, their only child, their little Naruto, was horribly malnourished. You could easily count every rib and the signs of his pelvis too. Both parents were curious at how their village could let this happen to their son, yet alone any child, but before either could ask any questions, a cough alerted them to Kyuubi. Before you 2 start asking questions, it might be easier to watch what has happened to your son for the past 5 years. With his photographic memory in mine, I've been able to record everything that's happened to him, conscious and unconscious, she suggested. Naruto looked ready to panic that his parents were going to find out what has happened so far and even things he hasn't. With a hand on each shoulder from both Kushina and Minato, they asked him if it was okay. With a slow nod, a large television screen appeared in front of them and a couch behind them. Getting the idea, they sat down and started watching from the moment Kyuubi was sealed into Naruto. They watched as Sarutobi announced to the village how Kyuubi was sealed in Naruto and how he was a hero only for the villagers and shinobi to call for his death. How when he brought Naruto to the council shortly thereafter, and once again the civilian side of the council called for his death and even some tried to attack him. They watched Danzo try to get the boy to make him into a weapon. The only good part from that was that except for the Uchiha clan head, every other clan head was respecting Minato's wishes. They watched his treatment in the orphanage where he had to sleep and what he barely got to eat. When he was kicked out on his 4th birthday and what was said to him till 6 months later when the Sandaime found out and got Naruto an apartment in the slums. Till finally they watched how he was running from the villagers and ninja on his current birthday to their attack on him and how an Uchiha used a Kaden jutsu to burn him. Then how shortly after Sarutobi arrived pissed off to the news the doctor gave him that startled all three of them and Kyuubi because she had been so busy she didn't even notice. Minato and Kushina were glad at how Kakashi viewed and how much he cared for their son. They were going to make him an honorary member of their clan after Naruto's birth. During the viewing, Kushina and Minato were shaking from the crying and rage towards their village. They would take glances at Naruto or hold him tighter during certain viewings and would sometimes see a look of shock on the boy's face from things he found out. At the end they each took some long breaths to handle their emotions. The first to speak was Naruto. Anyo Otu-san, Okawa-san, who was that man that called me Otuto. I recognize him as an Anbu who protects me a lot. Minato and Kushina smiled at their son and were surprised at how smart he is, but he is their son. Minato spoke next and said, that man was Hatake Kakashi Naruto-kun. He was one of my 2 remaining students when I was a Junin sensei. Then Kushina spoke up, he is a good and honorable man and we were going to surprise him by making him an honorary member of our clan after you were born, but as you know things don't always work out the way you want them to. During this conversation the Shinigami and Kyuubi walked over to them to get their attention. Shinigami cleared his throat and began, I'm sorry to break this up, but as you recall the reason Naruto is here is because of the attack on him. Unfortunately, due to the circumstance of his injuries, not even Kyuubi's healing abilities will heal him and he is slowly dying. He paused here waiting for an outburst and was not disappointed. As he calmed the 2 parents, one female Biju, and one 5-year-old, he continued. Now the reason for this is because Kyuubi cannot use more of her chakra because of the seal. If we were to change it to allow more of her chakra then he will be alright, but this does come at a cost. He paused again to let that set in and continued, now the seal originally would slowly purify Kyuubi's chakra into Naruto's own, adding to his reserves, and by the time he reached 25 it would be complete and Kyuubi could either come with me to the afterlife or become human with cage level strength. Now because of the recent development these conditions are still there with some minor changes and additions. For one, the age this would be complete would be 16, and because of adding more demonic chakra to Naruto's system he will have a new bloodline in addition to the ones he has already, but will be slightly demonic but no more than any other person with a demonic bloodline. As he looked at the expressions on their faces ranging from shock to curiosity, he was about to continue when Naruto interrupted him, Anyo Shinigami, what does this bloodline do? Shinigami had a twitch in his eye at the nickname while the other 3 were laughing there off, and he could swear he heard all the other gods laughing at him. After mumbling to himself for a few minutes he explained the bloodline. Well, obviously you will have an advanced healing ability, even more so than now. So you'll be immune to pretty much every kind of poison out there and you'll even be able to regrow limbs. The only ways to be killed will be having your head chopped off or your body is completely destroyed to the cellular level. But the best part in my opinion is eternal youth. You'll stop aging at 25 and live to an old age of about 150. Also, of course, this is passable to any children you have and any mates you have. He had a perverted giggle at the end along with Minato while the women were glaring daggers at them. Anyo, what are mates? Naruto asked. Everyone started sweating until they all said together, you'll find out when you're older. Naruto just sweat dropped at that but let it go for now. Meanwhile Kyuubi was sporting a huge blush that did not go unnoticed by the parents. They looked at each other in silent communication and nodded their heads. Kushina walked over to Kyuubi who noticed and started sweating. As she pulled her away from the others she took on a serious expression and said, explain. Kyuubi started stuttering saying, I don't know what you mean. Kushina gave her a hard look before smiling at her which freaked out Kyuubi and said, I approve. Kyuubi just stared at her and said, huh. Kushina continued smiling and said, Minato and I approve of you being Naruto's mate or one of his mates until he's older, of course. I've seen how much you care about him and how much he cares about you, and I have a feeling it will only get deeper as he gets older. Just promise me that you'll always be there for him and love him. Kyuubi looked on in shock and thought, am I that easy to read? But started smiling and had a tear run down her cheek as she hugged her future mother-in-law and whispered, thank you and I promise. Kushina just smiled back and hugged her but got a deviously grin on her face and added, just make sure to give me lots and lots of grandchildren. Kyuubi just looked at her shocked before her face turned redder and redder before passing out. Kushina just laughed before picking her back up and heading back to where the others were sitting on the couch in some newly appeared furniture. She had Minato, who was sitting next to Naruto, on the couch move and laid Kyuubi on the couch with her head on Naruto's lap. Minato and Shinigami chuckled while Naruto merely raised an eyebrow as he subconsciously ran his hand through her hair while looking at his mother and asking, what happened? She just smiled the deviously grin again and said, girl talk. As they got back on topic, Naruto looked down at Kyuubi and asked, what will happen to her if I don't accept? Shinigami just said, she will cease to exist as the seal hasn't finished its job. Naruto's neck snapped back up at Shinigami and said, I'll do it. I won't let someone precious to me let that happen to them. The remaining conscious adults smiled at that and Shinigami said, before we begin, is there anything else you two would like to say? Once the process is complete, I'll have to take you back to the afterlife. Minato stepped up to his son and hugged him before saying, son, no matter what you want to do with your life, know we will always support you. As you may have remembered, Shinigami mentioned that you already have bloodlines, one from your mother and one from myself. We won't tell you what they are because where's the fun in that, but you can find out in the clan estate. It is located about a mile in the forest behind the Hokage monument. The estate is protected by seals, so when you find the front gate, just apply some blood to it and it will open. Also, don't mess with anything that you know you aren't ready for in there. Wait until you're strong enough to protect your precious people before taking your full name. Remember, we love you and are so proud of you already. With that and a final hug and a kiss to the forehead, he let go to let his wife go. Kushina smiled at the scene of Naruto and Kyuubi before she kissed his right cheek and hugged him. There's not much I can add to what your father has already said, but that my bloodline is way cooler. She giggled and Naruto laughed at that while he could see his father try to keep a straight face. There's our family history in our scrolls as well. Learn from it and improve. Make sure to not repeat any mistakes from the past. When you read where I came from, I know you'll be surprised. She said with a smile. Remember to protect your precious people, as that is where true strength comes from. I love you, my little Naru-chan, and never forget that. She finished as she hugged him one last time and this time kissed his left cheek. Naruto cried, knowing this will most likely be the last time he'll see his parents before he joins them in the afterlife. After that was done, Shinigami has Naruto wake Kyuubi to start the process. Q-chan. Time to get up, Q-chan. She snuggled more into his lap and mumbled, few more minutes, Naru-kun, which had him smile at her and blush and the others to chuckle. He shook her a little more until she finally started opening her eyes. She finally realized where she was and blushed and jumped to the other side of the couch. Shinigami chuckled once more before saying, now that Sleeping Beauty is up, we can begin. Kyuubi was confused until Naruto explained what she missed before she jumped up and hugged both Minato and Kushina, and they hugged her back. Kushina decided to have one last teasing moment before leaving and said, now remember, Q, what you promised, and I want at least 3. She giggled at her blushing face before hugging her once more and kissing her forehead and whispering in her ear, take good care of my Sochi-yome, daughter-in-law. Kyuubi looked at her smiling face before she nodded her head and smiled back. Once she was back next to Shinigami and Naruto, Shinigami had the seal appear and was about to start when Naruto asked him a question, nay Shinigami, is there others like me? Shinigami was again heard the adults laughing and was now certain he heard the other gods laughing at him too. He looked at Naruto and replied, Yes, Naruto, there are. Why do you ask? I was wondering if once I got stronger if I could help them and the other Biju, Naruto replied. Shinigami looked into his eyes and saw no deceit and said, the only way would be through extremely advanced fuinjutsu. Tell you what, once you've become strong enough and a seal master on par with your Otu-san, then I'll deliver you the seals that will help each Jinchuriki, which is what you are called, with extracting their demons, as each one will most likely have a different seal and I should know by then what kind of seals they have. Naruto nodded and thanked his Shinigami, and let him continue the process. About 30 minutes later of adding seals that not even Minato recognized to override the old ones not needed and adding a few extra ones, he burned away the old seals and watched as Kyuubi's chakra flooded into Naruto. He started screaming and the others were helpless as they watched, and about 5 minutes later he stopped screaming and fell unconscious as Kyuubi put his head onto her lap as she ran her hand through his hair and was startled by Shinigami as he said, "It's finished." He walked back to Kushina and Minato, who had tears in their eyes, holding each other, knowing it was time to leave. As the three of them started to disappear, Shinigami's voice reached Kyuubi and heard what he said, "Remember to remind the Gaki to not tell anyone what has happened here for now, Kyuubi." She just nodded and continued stroking his hair. After sleeping for 16 hours straight, Naruto slowly opened his eyes and was expecting to be in his mind but recognized that he was in a hospital. He was about to think all of that was a dream until he heard a familiar lovely voice. It wasn't a dream, Naru-kun, it was all real. Shinigami-sama said not to mention anything that happened for now. Also to speak to me, just think it and I'll be able to hear you. Naruto just blinked before closing his eyes and thought, how are you doing, Q-chan? Kyuubi blushed as the very first thought was of her well-being. I'm doing fine, Naru-kun, now that I know you're okay. Naruto just gave her a mental hug and opened his eyes to look around the room. So what do you think I should do now, Q-chan? For now, since it is still dark out, just wait till the morning, since I've noticed the Sandame has been here every day along with others that care about you. I would let them know you're okay now, and when you are discharged, sneak to your clan house to find out about your bloodlines and you can start living there. Also, I was told by your mother that the place has enough food for 3 years so you can start eating healthy and get better. Then if you still want to become a ninja, I can help instruct you, since I'm sure they must have a training ground or some place to train. Naruto just listened to everything she had mentioned and couldn't help but be impressed. Wow, Q-chan, you're amazing. He praised, which earned a blush from our vixen. Soon he was back asleep and woke up at the sound of the door opening. He opened his eyes as he saw his Gigi and immediately woke up and jumped as his back was facing him as he closed the door, yelling, "Gigi!" and tackled the old man. Sarutobi was shocked but then noticed what the person said. Only one person calls me that, he thought. As he slowly turned around, there he was wide awake, smiling from ear to ear, hugging his Gigi's back. Suddenly Sarutobi began smiling as tears ran down his cheeks as he hugged his Magamusuko grandson. After a few minutes he placed Naruto back on the bed and looked him over for any injuries. When he didn't see any, he asked, "How are you doing, Naruto-kun?" Naruto smiled at his Gigi and said, "I'm good now, Gigi. When can I leave?" "As soon as the doctor clears you, Naruto-kun, and he should be in here soon. So tell me, do you remember how you ended up in here?" Naruto looked down and nodded. Sarutobi looked sadly at the boy. To be only 5 but to be through things not even a veteran ninja would have, he thought. "Do you want to talk about it, Naruto-kun? You know I'm always here for you." Naruto just hugged his Gigi and started crying. Even though he's cried with Q-chan and his parents about it, it still hurts. Sarutobi just hugged him tighter and just rocked him back and forth, saying, "It'll be alright, Naruto-kun, it'll be alright." After a few minutes the door opened and the doctor walked in. He was shocked as he saw his little patient awake and hugging the Sandame but smiled at the scene. He walked over to Naruto and began checking him for injuries. After the okay, he discharged Naruto after hugging the boy to let him know that he's not alone. Sarutobi did a quick Shunshin no Jutsu to avoid any villagers and appeared in his office, where he spent the rest of the day with the boy and any Anbu or other people who were worried about him. After a stop at Ichiraku Ramen in which Naruto set a new record for eating 33 bowls, they left to his apartment where he wished Naruto good night. Naruto and Kyuubi decided to wait a couple weeks until things calmed down to head to the estate. Once night fell though he headed off. It took him 20 minutes just to get to the forest on top of the Hokage monument. After an hour of traveling as quietly as possible into the forest, he finally found it. The place was huge. He found the front gate and, like his Otu-san mentioned, applied his blood to it after a quick bite of his sharpened canines. The lock glowed for a few seconds, then there was an unlocking sound, so Naruto slowly pushed the gate open. After he got through and relocked it, he noticed there were many houses, and the one in the middle he guessed was the clan head's house. The land was overgrown with grass and weeds, and he decided to take care of that problem when he had a chance. He slowly walked to the main house and noticed even though no one's lived here for 5 years, the houses looked well kept on the outside. As he arrived at the door of the main house, he noticed the same lock on the gate, so he applied blood once again and after a few seconds opened the door. When he walked inside, he was awestruck at what he saw. The place looked even bigger on the inside. The only noticeable problem was that the place was dusty as hell, but he figured after 5 years could do that. After traveling for about 10 minutes, he came upon the main bedroom and decided to explore the rest of the house in the morning. Naruto was having the best sleep of his life. He could finally relax, not having to worry if someone was going to break into his apartment and try to kill him. Slowly the sun rose and shined in through the window, landing on his face. He slowly opened his eyes from the warm sensation. When he finally sat himself up in bed, he looked around and smiled to himself. He was finally home. Home. He never thought he would have that, and it felt damn good. He walked through the mansion to see if he could find any clothes that would fit him. After an hour, he found 20 sets of clothes from various rooms. He went back to the master bedroom and put the clothes on the bed and headed for the bathroom. He turned on the water to the shower and started scrubbing fast before the water went off, but then he remembered that he wasn't in his old apartment where that old bitch of a landlady had timed his showers and took his time, feeling the warmth of the water on his skin. After about 20 minutes, he finished and took his towel and walked back to the bedroom. After getting dressed, he headed downstairs to the kitchen. He looked around but didn't spot any food. He could have sworn Kyuubi told him that there was food here. He opened his mind link with her and called to her. Q-chan. He tried again after no response. Q-chan, you there? He was about to try again but finally got a response. Hanaru-kun. What are you doing up so early? Naruto shook his head and thought. The sun has been up for over an hour now, Q-chan, and I wanted to get started on my training as soon as possible. Anyways, do you know where Okawa-san said the food was, because I don't see any? Kyuubi slowly stretched herself awake and remembered what Kushina had said. I remember now. She said that the food was stored in seals in the pantry room in the room next to the kitchen. Just apply a small bit of chakra to the seals and take what you want to eat. Naruto thanked her and walked to the room. As he walked inside, he noticed various labels for things like apples and bread and even things like milk. These must be some seals to keep things like milk preserved, he thought. As he was about to apply a small amount of chakra to various seals, he quickly remembered an important detail. Laughing nervously, he opened his connection to Kyuubi and said, Kyuubi. I just remembered I haven't accessed my chakra yet. Kyuubi's eyes widened as she blushed in embarrassment, as she too had forgotten that. Laughing nervously as well, she replied, well, I guess the first thing is to unlock your chakra. After he went out back, he found what looks like a training ground that would need to be cleaned up, but for now he decided to start his training. Naruto gave her a mental nod when he was ready and she started. To start, sit down and close your eyes. Look deep into yourself till you find something warm and grab onto it and don't let go. Pull it to yourself and make it part of you. Naruto did as told, and after about 10 minutes he found it. He grabbed it and pulled it to him. It was so warm and he felt the power running through him. He opened his eyes and saw his chakra around him. It was a dark blue that surrounded his entire body. He calmed down and watched it recede. Kyuubi smiled radiantly as she congratulated him. Well done Naruto, you managed to get it on your first try and in record time. For now, since your body is still repairing itself, which should be finished by the end of the month with you starting to eat healthy every day, we'll work on controlling your chakra. Since you already have high genin level reserves, you'll have to constantly work on your control as it will keep growing with my chakra converting to your own and naturally it increasing as you get stronger. But for now, head back in and have some breakfast. After having the best breakfast ever and restocking the kitchen, he headed back out to continue his training. And so for the next couple months Naruto trained every day, resting on Sunday. Like Kyuubi had said, his body was what it should have been and a bit better at the end of the month, and she had him start training his body. He started with 50 push-ups, sit-ups, leg squats and other various exercises, and finishing with 10 laps around the field, which equaled about half a mile in the morning. After that he would take a 30-minute break, then work on his chakra control until he was exhausted. He would visit the old man on Sunday so he wouldn't get suspicious. He had cleaned most of the inside of the mansion and started cleaning up his land. There were still some rooms he hadn't entered yet because there were seals on them. He decided to wait to clean the other houses for now. During those 2 months Naruto found the clan library, and it was impressive to say the least. He was sure there were more scrolls here than the Hokage's library. There were about a dozen tables around the room. He walked to a podium in the middle of the room and noticed 2 scrolls on it. The one on the left said, Namikaze Bloodline, on it, and the one on the right said, Uzumaki Bloodline, on it. He opened his Otu-sans first and began to read it. To Naruto, this scroll contains the information on the Namikaze Bloodline. Our bloodline is not a dujutsu like the Sharingan or the Byakugan. Ours is a body bloodline. It doesn't have a name, but it is indeed very useful. Our bodies are unique. Every time we are injured, our body becomes harder once we heal. So through constant training, one's body could become theoretically unbreakable. This was how I was able to withstand traveling at the speed of light using my Hiraishin no Jutsu, as only members of the Namikaze family would be able to survive that. Our bloodline was a gift to us by Kami herself. We do not know why she gave this gift to us, but we swore to never abuse this gift. Also, a little bit of interesting info is that most people don't realize, but when the Senju and Uchiha clans settled for peace and decided to find a location to settle down, they were not the ones who settled the land that is now Konohagakure. In fact, when they found the location, the Namikaze clan had already been settled there for a century. We allowed them to settle the lands next to us and helped them build the first ninja village. Over the years we had managed to own 51% of the lands within the village, and as a result anything on those lands, as well as an insurance policy. So suffice to say, we are the richest clan in Konoha. Unfortunately, throughout the Great Ninja Wars many of our clansmen died and there were only a small handful left when the Kyuubi attacked. I am sorry to say that they were among the first to have died that night, and that you are all that is left of our great clan. I know you will continue to bring honor to the clan, my son, and I love you and wish you a happy life. Your Otu-san, Namikaze Minato, Yondaime Hogake, Konoha no Kiroi Senko, Konoha's Yellow Flash. Naruto finished reading the scroll, amazed at the potential of his father's bloodline, and with his healing ability it would make his body stronger faster. He rolled it back up and opened his Okawa-san's scroll next. To Naru-chan, our bloodline is possibly one of the strongest in the world. The reason is because of the countless possibilities with it. Our bloodline was a gift from the goddess of the elements. This means that she granted us the use of the ability to control and master fire, wind, earth, water, and lighting. Some members of the clan were able to combine 2 elements once they mastered them to create a sub-element. One, for example, would be Mokuden. That's right, we have the ability to use part of the Shodai's fabled bloodline. This certain element would be a combination of earth and water. Another possibility is water and wind to create Hyoten jutsus. There used to be a bloodline clan that used Hyoten in Kurigakure, but I don't know if any members are still alive due to the bloodline wars that the Yondaime Mizukage started killing off bloodline users. Now, because of our bloodline, we were hunted down and killed during the Third Great Shinobi War. Our homeland was destroyed by a joint attack by Iwa and Kumo, and we managed to save most of the civilians, but I was the only member who survived from my clan. Our clan is from Uzu no Kuni Naruto. This is a special place because it is the last true kingdom. Our clan were the rulers of Uzu no Kuni. My parents were the king and queen of the country. I was their only child and royal princess and next in line for the throne, and that would make you a royal prince. Since I am gone, that makes you the next in line for the throne. I know this is a lot to take in, and I'm not saying you have to take the position, but as long as our clan lives, then so does Uzu no Kuni. Also, last I heard, the castle of the royal house was still standing, and in the throne room is the sword of the Uzumaki clan. Only someone with Uzumaki blood and only the ruler may wield the sword. This sword is known throughout the elemental nations to any sword master or any aspiring to be sword master. This is because it is the strongest sword in existence. It was a gift from the legendary summons of the dragon clan. The sword is indestructible and you can channel elemental chakra through it. If you do decide to restore our homeland, you must keep the sword out of view until you're ready to claim your birthright. I suggest making a seal on your wrist and sealing it in there. I told your father about my past after we got married, and the only person who knows of your full heritage is the Fire Daimyo, since the Namikaze clan has been allied with Fire Country since shortly after its beginning, in Minato was like a son to him and sent a letter to him explaining how he planned to defeat the Kyuubi and about who you are, and he will inform his successor if you do not contact him before he retires or dies. Before you get angry that he didn't come to get you, no, he couldn't, because that would have raised questions and could have started the Fourth Great Shinobi War. Well, I believe that's it. I love you, Naruto, and live a happy life. Your Okawa-san. Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina, Konoha's Red Death. Naruto reread that scroll a few times and was shocked at what he found out. He was royalty. He was royalty. He laughed so hard at that. He was definitely going to rebuild his ancestors' homeland. He couldn't wait to see the look on the villagers' faces when they found out. He opened the mental link and called out to Kyuubi. Hey Q-chan, have you been paying attention the past few minutes? He asked excitedly. Sorry Naru-kun, I've been planning your training. Why, what's going on? He smirked. He sat down and closed his eyes, entering his mindscape. He saw Kyuubi standing in front of him looking as beautiful as ever. He still had that smirk on his face, and when she noticed it, she raised an eyebrow. She looked at him and said, Well, are you going to tell me? He continued smirking and said, Look through my memories for the past 10 minutes. She nodded and he watched her face as it went from intrigue from his father's bloodline to amazement to his mother's bloodline to outright shock from her origins. She still had a shocked face when she settled on his still smirking face. He chuckled at her face and said, Well, what do you think? That broke her out of her trance and said the only thing that came to mind, Well, that's awesome. You have the potential to be the strongest person on the planet, Naru-kun. And you are royalty. I actually remember Uzu no Kuni. I can't believe I could have missed something like that. I mean, your mother's maiden name is Uzumaki. She said, then broke out laughing with Naruto along with her. That was definitely one of his favorite memories. It was the start of a new year and the start of the third month of training, and Kyuubi had Naruto start on the tree climbing exercise and up his physical training. Instead of 50 sets of everything, she had him do 100, and instead of 10 laps she increased it to 15. Naruto continued cleaning up the grounds on his days off and found seeds for flowers in a greenhouse that was used for making poisons and antidotes. He found out he had quite a green thumb and enjoyed gardening as it helped relax him. It was March now in the 5th month of Naruto's training. It was his first Sunday off and he decided to leave the compound and take a stroll, run through the forest. He was coming across the Hyuga compound and noticed a person jumping over the wall with a bundle that looked like it was moving. He had heard of the Kumo delegation coming to Konoha for a treaty and also how they wanted the Byakugan. Deciding to take the risk, he followed the person, and once he got close enough he noticed the headband was from Kumo and he was sure there was something alive in the bag. He crept up closer to hear what the man was saying when he stopped. The plan was perfect. Now that we've got a Byakugan and the heiress herself, we can breed her and start our own army of Byakugan wielders in Kumo, and I'll be regarded as a hero for capturing her." He laughed and was about to start running again when a voice caught his attention. Naruto was pissed at what he just heard. He loathed many things in life, and rape was one of his top things. He noticed the man was about to run again, so he made his presence known. "You know you shouldn't just yell out your plans like that in the middle of a shinobi village. You never know who's around." The Kumo nin looked behind him and noticed a kid who could be no older than 10. He laughed at Naruto and said, "What do you think you're doing, Gaki? You think you can take me on? I'm an elite Junin." He continued to laugh but stopped when a fist connected with his face, making him drop the bag and flew back a few feet. He stood up and glared at Naruto. "Not bad, brat. I was just going to let you run along, but for that I think I'll kill you." He charged Naruto, his right hand back, and threw it at Naruto, who dodged it barely and kicked the man in the chest. He stumbled back and charged at Naruto again, this time drawing out a kunai. Naruto knew he couldn't beat someone of his caliber and quickly began drawing as much chakra as he could. He sent a flare of his chakra, knowing anyone within a mile would be able to feel it. The Kumo nin registered what Naruto just did and grew more upset. "Damn you, brat. I don't have much time now. I need to kill you and take the girl and get out of here." He charged Naruto one last time with his kunai, and Naruto charged chakra to his hands, remembering how the Sannin Tsunade was able to multiply her strength doing it. He charged the nin and caught the hand with the kunai and threw his other chakra-enhanced fist right at the nin's face. He watched amazed at the power behind it. The man flew back, hitting a tree, and was knocked out. He snapped out of his trance when he heard a patrol approaching his location and knew that he had to run. With one quick glance at the nin and the bag, he hightailed it out of there. 10 seconds later, an Anbu squad landed and looked around the area. They noticed the Kumo delegate knocked out and the bag that was moving. The captain ordered his men to detain the delegate for questioning, and he moved to the bag. He opened it and found the Hyuga heiress bound and gagged with tears in her eyes. He took them off and said, "It's okay now. You're going to be okay." With that, he ordered his squad to take the man to torture and interrogation while he returned the girl back to her mother and father. Yes, Hinata's mother lives. Days later, the head of T&I torture and interrogation, named Ibiki, managed to pry the information from the Kumo delegate about his mission. The Raikage of course denied such a mission, and the Kumo nin was executed, and the village of Kumogakure had a trade embargo placed on it for 3 years. No one knew who it was that saved the young heiress, as no one had recognized the chakra signature before. When Naruto had returned home after the fight, he fell asleep and appeared in his mindscape. He looked around till he found Kyubi lying down by the waterfall. He walked over to her and sat next to her. She looked at him and smiled. "I'm proud of you, Naru-kun. You took on an opponent that was much stronger and experienced than you. Although the only reason you didn't die was because of luck, and although luck is important as the ninja world, skill is much more important. As a reward, I think you are ready for your first ninjutsu technique. This is a very special technique called Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. It is a kinjutsu, which you know means it's a forbidden technique. The reason is because it takes a large amount of chakra to perform and because of possible brain damage. But because of your insane large reserves and your high IQ, healing ability, and with me in here, you don't need to worry about the brain damage. What this technique does is create solid clones of the original, splitting your reserves in half. Also, anything that the clone learns is transferred back to the original. Can you tell me what benefits this might have in your training?" Naruto looked at her and said, "If anything it learns is sent back to the original, then that means it can be used for things like chakra control exercises, ninjutsu, reading multiple books at once, and I suppose taijutsu and kenjutsu training, right?" She nodded her head and said, "That's right. Of course you'll have to continue increasing your speed and strength on your own, but with the possibility of Kage Bunshins included in your training, you could learn something in a month that usually takes years." She smiled at his shocked face and closed his jaw. "Now why don't you go to sleep and rest, because when you wake up we will increase your training and I'll teach you the 3 academy style jutsus that they need to be able to do to pass." He nodded and laid his head in her lap and quickly dozed off. She smiled at him and ran her hand through his hair and went to sleep herself. After Naruto woke up and got ready for training, he went outside and heard Kyuubi say, "Alright Naru-kun, before I teach you the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, I'm going to teach you those 3 academy level jutsu first. To do the Kawarimi no Jutsu, put your hands in the following hand seals: ram, boar, ox, dog, snake, and then use your chakra to surround something and then pull it towards you, and you should replace with that object. If you get good enough, you can overpower the chakra of another ninja and use the technique on them. Now for the Henge no Jutsu, use the hand seals: dog, boar, tiger, and then think of what you want to look like down to every detail, and poof, you'll look like whatever you think of. Get good enough at that and suppressing your chakra and you can fool almost anybody. The final technique you might have some problems with for now because it requires such a small amount of chakra to use. This jutsu is called Bunshin no Jutsu. Unlike the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, these clones are not solid and don't transfer whatever they learn. When you are able to create one clone, you will have high Junin level chakra control. These are the hand seals: ram, snake, and tiger. With her showing the hand seal through the link, he gave a mental nod and started working on the jutsu. An hour later, he managed to do the first 2 jutsu to a decent degree but could only get as low as 50 clones for the 3rd jutsu before messing up. He was about to try again when Kyuubi spoke up. "That's good for now, Naru-kun. Let's get started on the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Now here are the correct hand seals: tiger with left and right, adjust to form cross. Pour as much chakra into the technique to see how many you can create for now." He gave her a mental nod and started practicing the jutsu. After about 30 minutes, he finally produced results. He opened his eyes and looked around. He looked around at his copies and heard Kyuubi speak again. "Good job, Naru-kun. You did the technique in record time and managed to create 100 clones with only being slight-winded. Not even most Junin could make that many. Alright, I want you to order 10 clones to head to the clan library and start reading basics for sealing, then start making seals themselves. I want 20 clones to practice the Kawarimi no Jutsu and another 20 to practice the Henge no Jutsu. I want the rest to practice the chakra control exercises we've been doing by combining them together." He relayed Kyuubi's orders to the clones and started his training. After the end of the day, he decided to see how many clones he could create before he messed up. He did the hand seals and spoke in a calm voice: "Bunshin no Jutsu." He looked around and saw he only managed to reduce the number to 48. He was about to complain when Kyuubi interrupted him. "Don't worry about it, Naru-kun. You showed improvement in only 1 day and you have years of training ahead of you, so take your time and don't worry about it." He calmed down and replied, "You're right. Sorry, Q-chan. I don't know what I'd do without you." She smiled and blushed at the praise but didn't respond. It was now June in Naruto's 8th month of training. Kyuubi had taught him some taijutsu in his mindscape at the beginning of his 6th month and would practice it with his clones. He was able to create 300 now and had them doing various things, improving his skills. He took up learning how to hunt and how to build, as well as learning to cook better meals. He sent more clones to the library as well to learn about the history of the village and the rest of the elemental nations. He also sent a clone to appear in the village every now and then to deter any suspicion of his whereabouts. With the help of his clones, he was able to finish cleaning up the houses and lands as well as exploring more of the area. Kyuubi had once again upped his physical training to 200 sets of everything in 25 laps, equaling about 2.5 miles every day. He still rested on Sunday and there was no stopping him from his pilgrimage to Ichiraku Ramen either on that day. Sarutobi and a lot of others had noticed that Naruto was getting stronger, and when questioned where he's been during the rest of the week, he replied, "At training grounds that aren't being used and away from the village to train myself," with a shrug. He had told his Gigi that he was practicing the academy level jutsu, and Sarutobi was shocked that Naruto had already unlocked his chakra. When he questioned Naruto about how he knew these things, he said that he had spied on some classes from the academy and watched some students train. Sarutobi wondered if he should enroll Naruto early in the academy. The boy seemed like a prodigy more so than his father. He knew it would raise hell when Naruto would enter the academy at the normal age of 8, and if he enrolled him earlier there would be an uproar from those who hated the boy. Before he even filled out the paperwork he asked Naruto this question. He was expecting for the boy to shout and say yes while jumping all over the place. He was not expecting the boy to shake his head and say no. The old man asked with confusion on his face, "Why do you not want to enter the academy early, Naruto-kun? You could be the youngest person to ever graduate from there. From what you have told me, you know things and are able to do things that a final year student should know." Naruto just kept a neutral face and said, "Because I have learned more on my own, with Q-chan's help of course, than I probably would 4 years in the academy. I have left the village alone for 8 months and yet the people still hate me. I still want to become the best Hokage this village has seen and will see, but I also want to become the best ninja in the world. I have no doubt that the teachers in the academy would try to hamper my education, so I'm training and learning as much as I can now so I will not be left behind once I do join." Sarutobi just listened to the words of his Magamusuko. Not even people twice his age spoke so well. The more he listened, the more he had to sadly agree in his heart and mind that the boy spoke the truth. If only those damn fools would just look at the boy and not the demon, then they would have seen the unfathomable depths of potential this child has. He took a long drag of his pipe and agreed. It was now August and the 10th month of Naruto's training. Overall, if Kyuubi had to guess, she'd put Naruto at high genin level. His speed and strength were low chunin, ninjutsu was mid genin with still only the 3 academy level jutsu and the Kage Bunshin no jutsu in his arsenal. Speaking of the academy jutsu, he has mastered the first 2 jutsu to a point without hand seals and has lowered the amounts of clones to 40 before he messes up thanks to his constant use of his now 400 shadow clones and now low Junin chakra reserves. He can fire kunai and shuriken at all 8 lethal points if standing still at the same time and is improving for moving targets. He has low chunin knowledge on seals and his taijutsu is mid-genin level as well. The only thing he is lacking is experience, which is why she has brought up this current conversation. "Nay Naru-kun, I want to say that I'm very proud of you. You've come very far in 10 months. If I had to overall guess your current skills, I'd say high genin. Sure, you are higher in some areas and lower in others, but that can be changed through more training. The only thing that more training cannot change is experience. If you had Kage level skills and no experience and were fighting a veteran Junin, then more than likely the Junin would win and you'd be dead. You currently have enough training and survival skills to live on your own, and I am thinking that either on your birthday or shortly after it that you leave the village to continue your training." Naruto looked at her wide-eyed. He couldn't deny that what she said made sense, and he's practically been living on his own since he was born. He wanted to say no to the idea, but he knew it was the most logical idea. He took a deep breath and said, "I agree with your idea. We'll need to start preparing then if we leave, because Gigi's not just going let me walk out of the village." She nodded her head and said, "Hi, wheel up your training till you have no energy to even breathe. You should start making a list of the things we'll need and the places you want to visit or stay away from. We should also study the patrols at night to make our escape easier." He sighed and nodded. So much to do in so little time. It was a week from the intended day. They had decided to leave the night of his birthday while the villagers get drunk and the shinobi have to pay more attention to the inside of the village to keep order than the outside. He had sealed every book, scroll, and note that were in the library and put them in part of his mindscape that was a duplicate of the library in the clan house after Kyuubi taught him a dimensional storage jutsu. He took the remaining food in the mansion including in the storage seals in the pantry and put them in his mindscape as well after recreating the preservation seals. He found out that they were pretty easy to create. He stored several sets of clothes and various other supplies in scrolls that he was going to carry on him. He also found some odd small square pieces of paper that he stored as well. Kyuubi told him that they were chakra papers that are used to determine what elemental affinity you have. Even though he knew he had the ability to use all 5 main elements, it would still help him determine which was his strongest affinity and his weakest. He and Kyuubi agreed to maintain his rigorous physical training for the first 4 days, then the next day a light workout while keeping up his chakra control exercises during each training. He spent the 6th day with his precious people while keeping up his guard since his birthday was only 1 day away and some people might want to give him an early birthday present. Today was the day, his 6th birthday and the day he leaves the village hidden in the leaves to continue his training. He spent the entire day checking and rechecking, making sure he had everything he needed and didn't leave anything behind. He dressed in all black as the sun set, placing the scrolls in his vest and placed a black mask on his face covering his whisker marks. He strapped the twin kodachis that belonged to his mother on his back at his waist that she used in Anbu as Konoha's Red Death, that he'd been practicing with for the past 2 months. The sun had set and he'd seen the fireworks signaling the beginning of the festival of Kyuubi's defeat. He walked out of the mansion towards the gate and before opening the gate took a long look at his home he'd be leaving for many years after only living there for less than a year. He took a deep breath and opened the gate, walking out and relocking the gate. He listened to it lock, then jumped into the trees, making his way towards the east side of the village for his escape while creating a shadow clone, giving it a message to give to its target, unaware of the danger that awaits him ahead. Another person was planning his move tonight. The destruction of his clan. This man is Uchiha Itachi. He took out his katana, killing his first victim, and continued his onslaught. As Naruto neared his escape route, he passed the Uchiha complex and smelt something that shook him to the core. Blood, he thought. He took out one of his kodachis and slowly began his way into the compound. When he arrived, he almost puked at what he saw. Bodies. Bodies everywhere. Covered in blood with limbs missing from that person or that person or that person. He could still he screamed, so he steeled himself and continued him. Uchiha Makoto could not believe what she was seeing. Her eldest son was slaughtering his own clan. Killing even the children. She watched as her husband demanded to know what he was doing. He simply replied, testing my abilities. Fugaku charged at him but was only his next victim. She ran out of the house looking for help. She knew she was no match for her son even if she was one of the strongest kunoichi in the village. She felt a pain in her leg resulting her in falling down. She looked and saw a kunai stuck in it. She looked back up into the fully matured Sharingan of her son. She closed her eyes as she saw him lifting his sword ready to kill her. She waited for 3 seconds when she heard a clang. Naruto sped through the complex when the screams stopped. He prayed that there were survivors. As he turned a corner, he saw a man raise his sword and prepared to kill a woman on the ground in front of him. He charged chakra to his legs and sped forward, hoping to make it in time. The assailant's sword was just 3 inches from her head when she opened her eyes from the noise to find what looked like a boy in black, no older than her youngest, with a kodachi held against her son's sword. She didn't move, too frightened from her son trying to kill her and where this mysterious boy came from. Naruto let a quick sigh of relief internally when he made in time. He pushed the attacker back and yelled, "Who are you and why are you attacking a clan of Konoha?" When Naruto looked closer, he noticed the person's eyes and gasped. This was the result of the power that didn't belong to this clan. Naruto looked into his eyes and said, "Tell me your name, Uchiha." Itachi was quite surprised when someone blocked his sword from killing his mother. He was even more surprised when it looked like someone no older than his younger brother, but the strength behind that push was remarkable for one his age and was even greater than him at that age. He was snapped out of his thoughts when the boy gasped, finally noticing his eyes and the, "Tell me your name, Uchiha." Itachi looked at his opponent that was in a standard sword stance. "My name is Itachi. May I ask the name of the person who has shown being worthy of proving my abilities?" Naruto looked at the newly named Itachi. He had heard of this person. Graduated the academy at the age of 7, made Chunin at 10 and finally Anbu captain at 13. This person was way out of his league. Naruto looked at his opponent and said, "No, you may not know my name for now. But if I survive this and we meet again, I will give you my name." Itachi nodded at that and then charged Naruto when his katana at his side. Naruto blocked the strike and attempted to kick him but was too slow and was punched by Itachi's free hand. Naruto jumped out of the way as Itachi threw several shuriken at him. It summoned 50 clones that temporarily shocked Itachi as he found out that these were shadow clones. He made quick work of them only to find his opponent and his mother gone. He picked up their trail and followed them. Naruto picked up the woman as his clones took care of Itachi. He knew that it wouldn't take him long to defeat his clones, so as he ran with the woman in his arms he summoned his chakra and sent a flare that would be felt throughout Konoha. It took only another 5 seconds for Itachi to catch up. Naruto looked at him and said, "I'm sure you felt my chakra flare. Every ninja in Konoha should be on their way here. If you leave now you still have a chance to escape." Itachi was not pleased but left, leaving his mother alive, and by luck ran into Sasuke and completed his second objective by morphing his eyes into the Mangekyo Sharingan and used Tsukuyomi to show every person he killed and up his mind. With that finished, Itachi left the village. Back with Naruto, he took out one of his scrolls labeled medical supplies and quickly bandaged up the woman's leg. He looked into her eyes and blushed a bit at finally seeing how beautiful she looked. He quickly erased that thought and said, "The wound isn't that bad, but you should still get a professional to check it out in case the kunai was poisoned or to make sure it doesn't get infected." Makoto just nodded, not trusting her voice as she stared into those amazing blue orbs called eyes. She saw him put the scroll back in his vest and got ready to leave. She quickly blurted out, "Makoto." When she saw him raise an eyebrow, she blushed. "That's my name. Uchiha Makoto. Thank you for saving me." She could see him smiling under his mask as he responded, "Stay strong, Makoto-chan. Stay strong," and with that he sped off in the same direction Itachi left. She blushed at the chan suffix. She was brought out of her daze as the Hokage and several Anbu and other ninja arrived, shocked at what they saw. Sarutobi saw the Uchiha matriarch still alive and rushed over to her. "Makoto-chan, what happened here?" Makoto looked up to the man's face and said, "Itachi, he killed them all. He killed off his own clan. If it wasn't for that boy, then I would be dead too." Sarutobi was shocked at what he heard. He quickly ordered everyone to search for survivors as he took Makoto to the hospital. There she told him of her savior and he was even more shocked. But what really got him was the description. A boy no older than 8 with blue eyes and blonde hair. He knew it was possible that it could have been a Yamanaka or even a henge, but his gut told him otherwise. He bid the woman a quick goodbye and get well and used a quick Shunshin no Jutsu and quickly arrived at his office. He was about to use his crystal ball to look for Naruto when he spotted a kunai with a paper around it on his desk. Quickly dismissing it as an exploding tag, he unwrapped the paper and saw it was a message. "Dear Gigi, I am sorry to say this, but by the time you read this I'll be out of the village. I have chosen to do this to further my training. I'll be able to gather experience and probably some cool techniques. I promise I will survive and get stronger. I will return before what would have been the day of my class's graduation test. Don't you dare die on me because I still need to kick your and take that hat. Love your Magamusuko, Uzumaki Naruto. P.S. I know you can't do anything since I'm not a ninja and only a citizen. Remember to remind the council, especially the civilian council and elders, as well as that old one-arm one-eye guy, that and give my blessings to the shinobi council." Sarutobi let a tear fall from his eye as he finished reading the letter. He knew now that it was Naruto who stopped Itachi from killing Makoto. He was so proud that his grandson was already so strong, and from that chakra flare earlier had quite a bit of chakra already. He steeled himself and called forth one of his Anbu to gather the council and alert them of what has happened. He chuckled to himself. Quite a genius plan for both of them to use this day for their plans. Naruto was already 20 miles from Konoha when he stopped to take a rest. He definitely wasn't planning on doing that during his escape from Konoha. He continued running for a few more hours before he found a place to lie down and go to sleep. It would definitely be an interesting few years. It has been 2 years now since Naruto left Konoha. He has been staying within Fire Country so far, but stayed close to the border in case he had to hightail it out of there. It seemed that Sarutobi had managed to convince the council shortly after the Uchiha massacre to up the graduation age after he had heard while traveling through the capital that Konoha had risen the graduation age at the academy to 15 now instead of 12, and the other ninja villages were contemplating it as well. He was glad about this as it gave him more time to train, and he always thought like Sarutobi that 12 was too young to have kids start killing. Hopefully with the extra 3 years they'll be more prepared for the real world, he thought. About a year and a half in their travels, Kyuubi had him start training with the chakra weights he had brought with him. He currently had 50 pounds on each limb to increase his speed and strength and 75 pounds on his waist to increase his flexibility. Kyuubi had told him on his 8th birthday that she would put him at mid-chunin level. He had high chunin strength and speed. Ninjutsu was still mid-genin as he hadn't learned anything else except the Shunshin no Jutsu and Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, which he can create roughly 1,500 clones with. His taijutsu was low chunin level. High genin genjutsu, thanks to his chakra control, has low junin knowledge of seals, and his chakra reserves are high junin. His control was getting better and was able to get as low as creating 30 bunshins before messing up. Kyuubi had told him that they would start working on his ninjutsu starting on his 9th birthday. He was currently walking down a dirt road on his way towards a town to pick up some supplies. He was chatting with Kyuubi when he came upon a scene. There were 30 samurai guarding a carriage, and in front of them were roughly 50 bandits, and leading them looked like 3 shinobi that had slashes across their hite. He inspected it and noticed they were leaf ninja. The oldest one was in his early 20s and was wearing a chunin vest, while the other 2 looked like genin. The oldest and apparent leader ordered the bandits to charge while he and the other 2 went around attempting to flank them. Naruto watched on, wondering what to do. He noticed the bandits were no match against the samurais, training which left the 3 ninja to him. He saw them jump from the trees heading toward the back of the carriage. He quickly drew 2 kunai and threw them at the genin and watched as they dropped dead with the kunai in the back of their skull. Surprised at what just happened to his allies, the chunin-looking man quickly stopped and spun around, putting his kunai in front of him in a defensive position. He noted his target was only a boy, but also noted by his posture he had shinobi training. Not taking any chances, he rushed toward Naruto. Naruto noticed the man charging him and threw some shuriken at him, only for the man to block them. He charged the man as they lock with their kunai against each other. The man attempted to punch Naruto in the head, only for him to swing his leg around, knocking the man on the ground. The man quickly rolled out of the way when Naruto's leg came coming down and left a small crater at its impact. The man jumped up and went through some hand seals, yelling out Kaden Gukakyu no Jutsu, and sent a decent-size fireball at Naruto, who used Shunshin no Jutsu to appear behind the man and stab his kunai into the man's skull. As Naruto looked around, he noticed that the samurai had finished off the bandits with only a few scratches here and there and were watching him with their swords still out. With the adrenaline gone, he looked back down at the 3 men he just killed. Killed? He thought. He watched as the blood continued to pool by their bodies. His eyes widened and he suddenly ran over to a bush and threw up. As he was doing this, he didn't hear the door open from the carriage and 2 people step out. One was a man and the other a woman, who both were dressed in very expensive clothing. The 2 watched as the young boy ran to the side of the road and threw up. The woman ran over to him and pulled him into a hug. Naruto was startled when he was pulled into a hug, but didn't feel any ill intentions from the person and slowly fell asleep in what he now deduced woman's arms from physical and mental exhaustion. She gently picked him up and let his reed rest on her shoulder and walked back to the group. The man watched his wife comfort the boy and walk back to them. He heard the captain of the guard speak. Judging by the way he fought, I'd say the boy has had ninja training. Pretty advanced training too for someone his age to be able to take down 2 genin level nuke nin and 1 chunin level nuke nin. The man nodded his head and added, I agree. Judging from his reactions, I'd say that he just made his first kill today as well. Take care of the bodies. Find out who the ninja were and send a report of their identities to Konoha that 3 of their nuke nin have been taken care of. Do not mention the boy in the report. We will also be taking the boy with us. I'm sure my wife will want to make sure he's okay when he wakes up. The captain saluted the man and said, "Hi Lord Nobunaga." As his wife stood next to him, he got a good look at the boy. If he is who I think he is, then it's not that surprising at how strong he is already. He thought, let's put him in the carriage. We'll take him with us to the vacation house and take care of him there. His wife nodded at him and gave him a kiss on the lips before stepping back into the carriage, him following right behind her. When Naruto woke up and noticed he was in a room, he looked around and spotted his equipment on a table, so he got up and put them on and left the room. As he walked down a set of steps, he spotted a man resting on a couch in the living room and a woman making something in the kitchen. He coughed to get their attention once he reached the bottom of the steps. The woman looked at him with a smile on her face as she walked over to him and hugged him. He was a bit shocked but hugged her back. After a few seconds, she pulled back and asked, "How are you doing? Are you hurting anywhere?" Naruto shook his head and said, "No mom, I'm fine. Thank you. Could you tell me where we are and who might you be?" She herded him over to a table and sat him down. He noticed the man sit up from the couch and took a seat next to him at the table. She asked Naruto, "Would you like anything, sweetie?" Naruto looked up at her. Would tea be okay?" She smiled at him and said, "Be right up." The man coughed to get his attention and said, "I'd like to thank you, young man, for protecting my wife and I from those bandits and ninja. Even though those bandits were no match for my guard, if it weren't for you, some men might have lost their lives against those ninja." Naruto looked down, remembering those that he killed. He felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up to see the man looking at him with a small sad smile. "I'm guessing that was the first time you have ever taken a life?" Naruto shook his head. "Yes," he said and looked back down. The man put his hand under his chin and lifted his head. "I know it is hard, but from what I have seen you do so far, I am guessing you wish to be a ninja. If you choose to live that life, there will be more who die at your hand, but as long as you don't enjoy killing, then things will be alright." Naruto listened to the man's words and felt slightly better before saying, "Arigato. You still haven't told me who you are and where we are." The man looked at him with a twinkle in his eye. "Ah yes, excuse my manners. We are at one of our vacation houses, and that would be my wife, Madame Shijimi, and I am Nobunaga, daimyo of Hai no Kuni," he said. He looked at the boy's shocked face before chuckling. "And by your appearance I would say you are Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, correct?" Now his wife was shocked before she ran over to Naruto, hugged him to her, and saying, "This is little Naruto. Oh, he's adorable. He looks just like his father," she ranted on. Nobunaga chuckled at his wife's antics before liberating the boy from her grip. "Honey, is the tea ready yet?" She blushed and said, "I'll be right back." With her heading back to the kitchen, Naruto seated himself in the chair before looking at the man. "Are you really the fire daimyo?" "Yes, Naruto, I am. I'm sorry for what has happened to you. There were so many times when I told myself to screw everything else and take you with me, but I knew that even though Minato and Kushina loved you, they would have killed me if I took you with me, most likely starting the Fourth Great Shinobi World War once your identity leaked out. By the way, Sarutobi sent me a letter shortly after you left the village. He was truly upset but understood your reasons for leaving." As Naruto was listening to him, Shijimi returned with 3 cups of tea and took a seat at the table, joining them. He looked to both of them and said, "So now what?" Nobunaga looked at him and said, "When you feel like it, you are free to go to continue your training. Just remember, you are always welcome in our home and can come to us whenever you need help." Shijimi just nodded her head and smiled at him. Naruto spent a week with them learning about his parents. He gave them each a hug and promised to visit them again before he returned to Konoha. Nobunaga told him before he left, "Don't worry, I have already told my guards to not mention a thing about you here or in the report I sent to Sarutobi about those missing nin." Naruto nodded his thanks and left to continue his training. It was 6 months before his 9th birthday and Naruto was planning on leaving Fire Country. He decided he was going to travel the world while training, spending about a year in each of the other great shinobi countries, starting by heading west, traveling through River Country towards Wind Country, then traveling north toward Bird Country, then east through Rain Country, grass country, and waterfall country. Next to Earth country, then double back, traveling toward the ruined kingdom of his ancestors to make plans for it, then traveling to lightning country. After that south to water country with Nagi Island next, then leaving by ship from Oazu Island to sea country. Then finally catch a ship north to tea country and traveling up north through the country back towards fire country. He was about to depart when Kyubi spoke to him. Naru-kun, since we've decided on this course of action, I think we should use those chakra papers and find out how your elemental affinities play out instead of on your next birthday as planned. Naruto gave her a mental nod and took out a piece of paper from one of the pockets on his vest. Just apply chakra, then watch what happens, correct? Kyubi replied. Aye, that's right. It splits in half if wind, crumbles if lightning, gets soggy if water, burns if fire, and turns to dust for earth. Naruto nodded his head and started applying his chakra to the paper. He watched in fascination and confusion, and Kyubi in shock at what happened. It started with the paper getting sliced in two, then the upper portion of the left side got soggy, the upper portion of the right side turned to dust, the middle portion of the left one burned, the middle portion of the right one crumbled up, followed by the lower part of the left one shining, then the lower part of the right one turned completely black. After a few minutes he spoke to her through their connection. All right, so my strongest affinity is wind, followed by water, earth, fire and lighting. That I get, but what the hell were those last two? Kyubi was shaken from her shock when Naruto spoke to her. She shakily replied, I don't know how this is possible, but those last two were the other main elements. She was cut off as Naruto asked her, other main elements? I thought that there were only 5 main elements. No, there are actually 7 main elements. The 5 well-known elements and then the other 2. Light and dark. Naruto replied, light and dark? I've never heard of those before. Is the darkness element like the bloodline the Nara use? Kyubi shook her head. They use a much weakened version of the darkness element. Naruto just stood there, then thought, how come I have never heard of these elements before? That is because these elements haven't been used in centuries. The only human who was able to use those elements was the Rakudo Sennin, Kyubi replied. Naruto just shook his head at the new information, then said, well, for now we'll leave it at that. Maybe you can go through your memories to see if you know of any ninjutsu he used with those elements. I'd rather wait till I have a good grasp on the others first before I even start on those 2. Kyubi gave him a mental nod and said, will do, Naru-kun. Naruto was a week from the border between fire and river country. He noticed there was a storm approaching fast, so he looked around for some cover. He eventually found a cave entrance that was covered in vines. He cut them out of the way with a kunai and walked in when it just started pouring. He continued into the tunnel when he noticed a red glow at the other end. As he got closer to it, the hotter it got in the cave. He figured there must be a magma flow running through the cave and guessed right when he exited the tunnel and entered a large room and saw the lava. It was quite a sight. But when he looked back up, he was amazed at what he saw. On the other side of the room, carved in the wall, was a picture of a phoenix, and with the glow from the magma it looked quite real. He noticed that in its mouth looked what appeared to be a scroll. He looked around and noticed that the only way to get there was to travel along the walls. He applied chakra to his feet and began walking up the wall, then towards the scroll. As he got closer he could see the details in the carving, and when he approached the scroll, took it out of its mouth, wary of any traps. When he landed in front of the tunnel again, he opened the scroll and noticed that it was a summoning scroll, but there were no names on it. Kyubi was watching Naruto and was surprised when she saw the phoenix. She had a pretty good idea at what summon that scroll was for. "Ne-Q-chan, how do I sign this contract?" Kyubi was a little hesitant in replying. If this was what she thought it was, then it would be a powerful ally if Naruto succeeded. She knew though if anyone could do this, then her Naru-kun could. Draw some blood and write your name in the first slot in the scroll, followed by leaving your fingerprints for the hand you're going to use for the summoning. After that, do these hand seals: boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram. Then draw some blood again on your hand, then apply as much chakra as you can for your first time and slam your hand onto the ground and say Kuchio's no jutsu, Kyubi informed him. He did as instructed and summoned as much chakra before he slammed his bloody hand on the ground yelling Kuchio's no jutsu. A large puff of smoke appeared covering most of the room. As it dissipated, his eyes were wide at what he saw. It was a phoenix and it was huge, about the same size as the famous Gamabunta when its wings weren't stretched out. He was shaken out of his stupor when it spoke. I see someone has finally signed the phoenix summoning contract. It looked down at Naruto and said, and a very young summoner as well. I can sense great power within you, but before I let you use my clan you must pass a test. Naruto looked at the creature and said, test? What kind of test? The phoenix looked at him in the eye and said, a test of the heart. We of the Phoenix clan are one of the 4 legendary summons. To be able to use this, the summoner must have a pure heart and soul. Do you wish to continue this test? If you shall fail you will die to keep the location of the scroll safe. Naruto looked the phoenix in its fiery eyes with his own burning with determination. I accept. I will not fail. I have too much to do to die now and I won't let Q-chan die either. The phoenix said, very well. We shall see if you are worthy of the phoenix contract, and with that Naruto was engulfed in fire. The phoenix watched through Naruto's memories and watches his heart and soul remained pure and became only stronger. It was quite surprised when it saw Shinigami and how he has the light and dark elements. It knew that this boy would make a great ally of the Phoenix clan and that the gods must have plans for the child since the more matured of the Phoenix clan are able to use the light element including itself. It concluded the test and watched as the flames left the boy. Congratulations Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. You are the first summoner of the Phoenix clan. As I said earlier, we are one of the 4 legendary summons. I am quite surprised at what you have gone through so far. I believe we can also help you with your light affinity when you start training in it, as the more matured phoenixes within the clan including myself are able to use this element. I expect great things from you, child. Practice summoning with different levels of chakra to see what you summon. Before I leave, let me tell you who I am. I am the boss of the Phoenix clan, Fenikusu. Naruto nodded his head and said, Arigato for giving me a chance, Fenikusu-sama. No need for formalities, child. I am much too old to care about those, Fenikusu chuckled. Until next time, Fenikusu, Naruto said. The boss Phoenix nodded and disappeared back to the summon world. When Naruto went back to the entrance to the cave, he saw it was still raining, so he decided to take a nap after everything that's happened. When he opened his eyes, he saw the smiling face of Kyuubi. She tackled him and hugged him to her ample bosom with him having a small blush. No matter how many times that happens, he just can't get rid of how good it feels. She pulled away from him and said, You're amazing, Naru-kun. You have signed the contract of one of the legendary summons. I had a good idea that was who it belonged to, but I knew if anyone could gain their trust it would be you. He smiled at her as she hugged him to her bosom again. Yup, today is definitely a good day, he thought. Naruto had made good time crossing through river country. He decided to stay for a month there working on his water manipulation before training for a year in wind country. He learned a few Suiten jutsu too from the scrolls he brought with him. He was able to get his manipulation to high genin level before he left. He spent the next year working on his wind manipulation. He would stay at small towns and staying away from Suna as often as he could, but would drop by when he needed supplies they couldn't provide. He managed to get his wind manipulation to high chunin level and had quite a list of Fuden jutsu as well, ranging from C-rank techniques like Fuden, Datapa to Suna's prized A-rank technique K's no Yeba that he was able to see a Suna Junin named Baki perform. He also continued practicing summoning different levels of phoenixes. The younger ones were quite excited to meet a human, while the older ones sometimes helped him on his wind manipulation training. He had also met the daimyo of the country after he had heard how Naruto was defeating bandits roaming his country. He and Naruto got along very well and became quick friends. Naruto had asked him to keep his identity a secret before he left. He agreed and welcomed Naruto to his country and home anytime he wanted. Naruto spent about a couple months traveling through bird country, rain country, Grass Country and Waterfall Country, meeting the daimyos of each country and becoming friends after defending them from bandits or defending towns from bandits through his travels. While in Bird Country he met the children of Daimyo Owashi, Toki, who he took a quick liking to, and her twin brother Sagi. He avoided Aim as he did not want to deal with the legendary ninja Sanshou no Hanzo, who defeated Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru in their prime together with his summon, and was the one who dubbed them the Densetsu no Sannin during the Second Great Shinobi World War. He visited Kanobi Bridge, where his father's genin team destroyed the bridge to help lead to victory during the Third Great Shinobi World War, but at the cost of his genin Uchiha Obito, and how Kakashi gained the Sharingan from his dying teammate's last wish. He also heard that the last member, a girl by the name of Rin, left the village shortly after his father was chosen for Yondaime Hokage. During his travel through Waterfall Country he met another Jinchuriki by the name of Fu, who was a genin from Taki, who was 3 years older than him. He told her about himself and his plans for himself and the other Jinchuriki. She was shocked, but she believed him. He told her to travel to Whirlpool Kingdom and stay in the royal palace if she needed someplace to hide. He planned on putting seals around the place like the Namikaze compound to keep intruders out, and only people with blood the seals recognized would be allowed let in. She hugged him and gave him a kiss on the cheek, which earned a blush from him that both Kyuubi and Fu noticed. After taking a sample of her blood and bidding her goodbye, he traveled to Earth Country.